What are your patterns creating? This is a very interesting idea to think about, and I want you to sit down here and think about this. You know, in the day to day, what we do, how we think, can all seem very small. But if we're doing things repeatedly every day for weeks, months, years, decades, then that's going to create the character. That's all going to be votes cast towards programming your brain, programming your mind towards whatever character these actions are around. And life really is just a bunch of moments strung together. And neurons that fire together wire together. So if your brain is always firing in a certain pattern with a certain habit, then you're going to continue to fire in that way and go in that direction. So very practically, what does this look like? If you're an individual that works out every day and that sees the value in that, and then continually trains your mind to see the value of working out every single day, then you're going to continue that pattern. I remember very early on, I saw this, where fitness was if I could just work out every day, this is a systematic thing that I can implement that will pay me dividends throughout the rest of my life. And making healthy food choices as well. Being able to set boundaries around what goes into my body. Also think about how you allow yourself to see and perceive reality. Reality is a blank slate. It's not good or bad. It's a null point. There's nothing in reality that's good, and there's nothing in reality that's bad. Everything that's interpreted in that way is relative to your own survival agenda, relative to your self-construct, otherwise known as the ego, relative to your bias. But what's really interesting, though, is that you can choose to shape your bias, choose to shape how you even see reality by continually choosing to see things in a positive light. A lot of times we are trained to see things negatively, and what ends up happening is that we end up projecting the worst outcome of reality all the time as a pessimistic view of reality. And we will rationalize it to ourselves by saying it's practical. And this is a huge trap to fall into. Because when you say that it's practical, then you are justifying your patterns of being negative or, being realistic. And then you shut yourself off from being able to change. You shut yourself off from being able to dream a better, brighter, more positive tomorrow. And you close your mind to even experiencing reality in a way that is enjoyable, and you close yourself off from being happy. It's a very interesting thing how this works. And so in an effort to survive, you forget about the big picture, right? You think about you want to be practical in the moment, but you forget to think about how even your attitude towards problem solving and your attitude towards how you deal with things, we forget how that attitude is going to program our minds, and that programming in our mind is going to shape our perception into even what we pay attention to. And if you're always paying attention to what's negative, then that's only thing you're going to see in reality. If you're going to pay attention to all the ways that you're losing in reality, then you're just going to keep on finding ways that you're losing, and you're actually going to manifest more losses in your life. Whereas if you have the perception of reality where you're paying attention to how you're winning and all your wins and counting your wins and counting what you're grateful for, then in that regard, you're going to find even more things to be grateful for. You find even more things to appreciate in life, and find even more things to be positive about, and find more things to be happy about. And you'll just have a greater amount of moments of being able to enjoy life. And fundamentally, life is just trying to string together each moment, mastering each moment, trying to experience it as fully as possible, and to live it as thoroughly as possible, as positively as possible, such that you are the happiest throughout the net, most amount of time, to the longest period of time. So I want you to pay attention to how you even think about things. When a problem comes up, do you choose to see it as a bad thing? Or do you choose to see it as a good thing? Do you choose to see it as a challenge that's growing you? Because problems will keep on coming up until they are no longer. And typically, things that keep on happening again and again is because we haven't learned our lesson yet. It's really interesting how this works. And then what ends up happening is that when you start getting a lot of momentum with ridding things that weren't problems in the first place, or ridding things that are problems for you through growing yourself, you end up living life with less and less and less problems. Because you realize just how much of them were just constructs of your own mind. And these constructs in your own mind are making you miserable, and you're not conscious enough to be able to even drop it. You're not conscious enough to recognize the absurdity of holding such an idea in your mind, and you can be able to recognize just how much it's making you suffer. And when you have a certain level of consciousness, you can see how silly it is, to the point where it's just easy to drop, because it's just like, well, this is nothing. And that's a really cool place to get to. There's definitely a few places in my life where there's been things like that, where it doesn't even cross the threshold of it being a problem, because I've trained my mind so thoroughly and this is just by just making choices in those moments that people would typically make choices on to give themselves an excuse to see things negatively. I really recognize that now, because I've trained my perception. I'm a lot less stressed about things that are seen as problems in many people's lives, which is really good. And that is actually the most practical. What's most practical is how to maintain your state of mind at all times. How to maintain a baseline state of consciousness where you are calm, collected, happy, healthy. Let's talk about your habits. So I spent all this time thinking about talking about your perception of reality. But of course, our character is solidified in the moments of self-inflicted adversity that we have on ourselves. It's solidified in the actions, and most importantly, the actions that are a pain in the ass to do, things that are emotionally difficult to do. I want you to notice if you have experiences in your life where you kept to a habit, or you kept to a routine or behavior, even though you didn't want to. And how much that meant towards shaping the character that you want to become and that you are today. I've really noticed, I take a look at my habits and what I'm doing right now, and I realize like, oh shit, like I need to read more. I need to contemplate more. I think about like what I'm currently doing and what is the trajectory if I continue doing this for years. And I realize like, oh, I'm missing this. I'm missing meditation. I'm missing books. I'm missing contemplation. And they seem so small. But when you stretch it out for years and think about what kind of person you will become if you could just integrate these small habits every single day, the effort is Herculean. Like the result is Herculean. That's what I meant to say. In a way, the effort is Herculean, but in a way it's not, because it's just taking one bite every single day. But to be devoted enough to commit yourself to something, like a habit of reading an hour a day, or even 2 hours a day. I think about Naval Ravikant. So he says he reads 2 hours every day. Angel investor guy, very rich, smart businessman is what I'm talking about when I say Naval. And I realized like, yeah, like I need to train my mind more with high quality information. I talked about this in the previous episode, high input, high output or something like that, where if you got a lot of good input in your mind, then you're going to have a lot of good output in your life. And that input needs to be constantly fed like clockwork every day. Now, I do listen to podcasts and whatnot, and that's also good too. A mental toughness hack, by the way, is to listen to a motivational speech every single day. I remember listening to Wes Watson and just listening to him on a daily basis or near daily basis for a year now. I've really changed my perception of a lot of things, and it's been definitely an upgrade for me. And it's just like one small thing, right? And I recognize now, and I want you to recognize, I want you to think about, okay, what habits do you have? What good things are you doing? What good things do you need to be doing? And what are the bad things that you're doing? And I want you to project them out into years into the future, into what kind of person you are creating. Some of these problems will, when you project them years into the future, they'll scare you so much now that you'll be a lot more motivated to change it. Like I remember I was 19 years old and I was still very much so scared of falling asleep. And fundamentally it comes from, there's a whole ball of, a whole rat's nest of reasons why. But I realized like the number one of the biggest reasons was fear of letting go of just being awake, letting go of my consciousness, if that makes sense. But I realized just how big of a problem it was, and that if I continued having this problem of going to sleep, then this would just destroy my entire life. And so as a result, I made a huge effort, and it's been years that I've been continually finding ways and healing myself in certain ways to permanently solve this problem. Now it's very good. I'm a lot better than ever with sleep. And this is great because it's something that's plagued me for almost 2 decades. So that's interesting. But I wouldn't have fixed it if I didn't have the sight of like, oh, like where is this leading, right? When we talk about the topic of this video, where are all your habits leading? And when you think about picking up a new healthy habit, this can actually be a great exercise for you to pick up any habit, right? It's like, well, what if I read an hour a day for the next 365 days? What if I just challenge myself and I commit? Reading an hour a day for 365 days, here's what I learned, right? It might not seem much, but you highly underestimate 365 hours. That's a lot of time. A lot of time. And that's great. I think about the Vandeos belt system. I'm holding on to my white belt right now, currently with 2 stripes. It's probably ready for 3 stripes right now. And that system is a way to track my reading, and by the time I finish that system, I will have had about 4,500 hours of tracked reading. And that's just tracked. So that's really interesting. And that's the standard I've really set for myself. That's how much I want to read and how much knowledge I really feel like I need to absorb in order to become who I came here to be. So I couched it into a context of the Vandeos belt system, right? So I've created a system around a habit that I want to embody so deeply that I want to become a part of my character. So yeah, to end this off, here's the exercise. List out the positive things that you're doing right now. List out the negative things that you're doing right now. And also list out the positive things that you want to be doing. And list out the negative things that you might be doing as well. That you could be doing in the future that you may have done before, right? And with that in front of you, put that aside. And I want you to currently introspect on what are your current habits creating? What kind of mind is your current attitude? What kind of mind are you creating with your current habits? Is it going to be more intelligent or less intelligent? Is it going to be more disciplined or less disciplined? I think about my cold showers every morning, It's like, dude, that's moving the needle every single day. It's incredible. And that's one thing I've implemented that I can project years in the future, how it's going to change my mind. Think about how what you are currently doing is shaping your mind right now. And then now take your list that you just brainstormed and go through each one. Each of the big ones, especially the ones that take up your time a lot. And go think about like, hey, if I had this, let's say this bad habit, if I had this and I kept on going with like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, like really imagine what hell are you going to create by still having that vice or by still having that negative behavior or even that negative way you see reality. And really ask yourself, like, is this the character I want to create? And then with all the positive things that you want to be doing and that you are doing, you can ask yourself, okay, is maintaining this habit, maintaining this behavior, like what am I going to create by 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years into the future? Who am I going to create by embodying this every single day, by doing this every single day? And also the same thing with the things that you really want to implement right now. Start to imagine just what kind of specimen that you can become. What kind of expert, what kind of genius you can become, that you can grow into if you embody this potentially emotionally difficult habit, to train yourself, to train your mind, to train your perception of reality. This is really what vision is all about. Vision is connecting the dots from what you're doing right now into the beautiful, limitless possibilities of who you could be. It's all connecting it down to what are you doing in this moment. And these kind of visions have really inspired me to let go of all my vices. Let go of video games, let go of, binge watching YouTube or looking at memes. At least more than ever, Something that I would spend 8 hours a day wasting my time with, I may spend 10 minutes, which is an incredible difference. You think about how that's going to change your mind. Really have the courage to vision out who you want to be. And through that vision, that will give you the strength needed to make the emotionally difficult decision to really change your behavior and to kill your old part of yourself. Because really that's what you're doing when you are when you are changing yourself in any way, you're actually just killing who you are right now for the new self to come in. I think about one last example I will put in is that I realize that my perception of reality is the number one guiding factor in my success. And one important facet of that is being able to generate ideas. I've recognized this, and I wish I've recognized this a little bit early on, but I'm glad I finally recognized it in time, because I asked myself the question, what is the most important skills? What is the most important changes of perception of reality that I need to make to fulfill my goals? And when I think about the goal of being a YouTuber, the number one thing is having superior ideas. And I realized, okay, so I need to dedicate time every single day to training my mind to come up with ideas. And it's a definite important thing to implement. Definitely an important thing to implement. And I realized this, and I'm already gaining some momentum with that. And I also just expanded that definition into I want to just train my mind into a very creative one, such that I identify with high levels of creativity, such that it's not just with YouTube videos, but it's with any approach in life, such that I can think laterally, have all that lateral thinking going for me. And another amazing shift in perception is to see funniness everywhere. I've done 90 days programming my mind with the following phrase: I see funniness everywhere. And this has changed my perception of reality a lot. I've also programmed my mind with I am completely independent of the good and the bad opinions of others. And that has changed my perception a lot. And these are all strategic changes in perception. This is why visualization and affirmations are so powerful. So I want you to think about a lot more about how is what you're doing right now shaping your perception of reality? And think about how that's going to compound for the rest of your life. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.